For a long flight, you're exhausted, but you're so ready for that vacation to start. You stand up, you stretch, and you take your first step into a new country. But what if you only have 2 more steps to live? We're about to dig into how a dream trip turned into an absolute nightmare, all because of a killer that literally hides in plain sight. Look, this isn't some plot from a movie. This is a real story. A perfectly healthy 28-year-old woman takes 3 steps off a plane, and her life is over. The question that everyone had was why? How could this possibly happen? So let me introduce you to the woman at the center of this mystery, Emma Richards. She was so excited, She was posting on social media from the airport, texting her boyfriend about the amazing adventure she was about to have in Australia. And what makes this whole thing so unsettling is how completely normal everything seemed. Emma was the picture of health. She'd just passed a physical with flying colors. She was active, she didn't smoke, she ate well. People on the plane said she seemed totally fine, even cheerful for that entire 14-hour flight. There were 0 warning signs, none. And just like that, it was over. 1 second, she's walking off the plane, just like everybody else. The next, she's on the ground. Paramedics were there in minutes, but it was already too late. The vacation she'd been dreaming about was over before it even had a chance to begin. So as you can imagine, an investigation starts immediately. Her family was just devastated and totally confused. How does a perfectly healthy young person just die for no reason? Everybody needed answers, and they needed them fast. But the investigators were completely stumped. They looked at everything, right? Airport security footage. They talked to other passengers. There was no sign of a struggle, no foul play. They started ruling out all the usual suspects for a sudden death, a heart attack, a stroke, maybe a really bad allergic reaction. But none of it fit. Nothing made any sense. Her heart was strong. The medical examiner confirmed it, no question. It was not a heart attack. Okay, what about a stroke? They checked. Her brain showed absolutely no signs of a stroke or any other kind of neurological event. The mystery just got deeper. This was the question on everyone's mind. If it wasn't a heart attack and it wasn't a stroke, then what in the world could have taken her life so quickly? And the answer, when it came, was just chilling. The killer wasn't some outside force. It was something that had been growing silently inside her own body during that flight. A huge blood clot had formed in her leg, broken free, and traveled all the way to her lungs, killing her in seconds. So what is this silent killer? It's really a 2-part medical nightmare. It starts with something called deep vein thrombosis, which you might have heard of as DVT, and it ends with something called a pulmonary embolism, or PE. Let's break down what that actually means. Honestly, the best way to think about a pulmonary embolism is this analogy. Imagine your blood vessels are highways that deliver oxygen all over your body. Well, a PE is like a sudden, catastrophic multi-car pileup on the main highway going to your lungs. If traffic stops, oxygen stops, and the whole system just shuts down almost instantly. But what's so critical to understand is that the journey starts somewhere else entirely. See, first, the clot, the DVT, it forms in a deep vein, usually in your leg, often just from sitting still for way too long. Then, the moment you stand up and start moving, that clot can break free. It travels up through your bloodstream like a ticking time bomb until it reaches the lungs, gets stuck, and creates that fatal blockage, the PE. So, knowing all this, let's rewind the tape on Emma's final hours. Were there any warning signs? It turns out, yeah, there were. But they were so subtle, so easy to dismiss, that they were tragically missed. 2 days before her flight, Emma had mentioned to a friend that her calf felt tight and a little swollen, but she just blew it off as a pulled muscle from the gym. That was warning sign number 1. Investigators think the clot probably started forming around hour 6 of the flight. By hour 10, it was already about the size of a grape. And then within 45 seconds of her standing up, it had traveled to her lungs and killed her. When you look back, it was a series of small, seemingly harmless decisions that created this perfect storm. She barely moved for 14 hours. She didn't drink much water because, she didn't want to keep using the tiny airplane bathroom. She sat with her legs curled up, which can restrict blood flow. She even took a sleeping pill, which kept her even more still. Each one of those little decisions unknowingly fed the killer growing in her leg. And this is exactly why people say to stay hydrated and move your legs, even if you're just doing ankle pumps in your seat on those long flights. Emma's story is absolutely horrifying, but it's really important to know that this is not some one-in-a-million freak accident. This is a widespread and honestly an often hidden public health threat. 100,000. Let that number sink in for a second. That's the estimated number of people in the United States alone who die from pulmonary embolisms every single year. A lot of these deaths are tied to just not moving, long flights, long car rides, or even just sitting at a desk for too long. Think about this. A long flight, which is defined as anything over 4 hours, can increase your risk of developing one of these blood clots by up to 26%. That is a significant jump in risk, yet most of us never even think about it when we get on a plane. And part of the problem here is that awareness is just shockingly low. A lot of airlines only mention the risk in the fine print of that safety card that, let's be honest, almost nobody reads. In response to this, Emma's family actually started a foundation, and they're fighting to make these warnings mandatory and really clear on all long flights. So all of this leads to the most unsettling question of all. Emma's story is a tragedy, for sure, but its real power, its real terror, lies in what it means for the rest of us. And here's what's so important to understand. Emma wasn't a high-risk person. She had no known risk factors, no family history of blood clots, nothing that would have ever flagged her as being in danger. And that's what makes her story so terrifyingly universal. But there was one final, chilling piece of the puzzle. After she died, genetic testing revealed she had a minor but very common clotting disorder. This is a condition that millions of people have. They live with it every single day, completely unaware that they're carrying this hidden risk factor, just waiting for the right circumstances, like a long flight, to pop up. So, we'll leave you with this thought. The next time you're on a long flight, or maybe just sitting at your desk for hours, and you feel that little ache, that tightness in your calf that you'd normally just brush off, remember Emma's story. Is it just stiffness, or is it a countdown? Because the most frightening thing about this silent killer is that you never know when that countdown has already begun.